can see, I am coming to you from misty and rainy Michigan. I'm really sorry that I can't be there with you today because my friend Maria Brinck is going to be speaking to you about leadership. I've known Maria for 19 years. I've always been impressed with her forthright intellect and her absolute can-do attitude. I know you'll see that as she speaks to you today. She's always been a thoughtful leader in pretty much everything she's done. And recently she's turned that attention and her experience and her intellect into how we can examine the leaders in our lives, how we can become better leaders ourselves. She's put that all into the book she's going to talk to you about today. It's called The Leadership We Need. In her book, she challenges some of the outdated ideas of what leadership is supposed to look like authority, titles, and stuff like that, and replaces it with something far more human, practical, and necessary. She shows us that it's really about how we show up for the people in our lives. Maria has a way of cutting through the noise, asking the right questions, the type of questions that we might have in our mind, but we don't necessarily say out loud. She offers perspectives that make you pause and reconsider what leadership really could be. So I'm very excited to have her speak to Boulder Rotary, and I hope you will join me in welcoming her.
All right, can you all hear me okay? Yeah? Well, what an introduction. Getting everything in order here. All right, well, good early afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you all this very snowy day. And I wanted to take this opportunity to say happy International Women's Day. Yay. And also I wanted to take this opportunity to, of course, thank Cassidy Murphy, Cinda, Carl, for organizing this and getting me here up on the stage today. I'm very excited to what I'm going to talk to you about. And before I get into the talk, I want to really thank you all for the motto that I know Rotary has, and that is service above else. I couldn't think of anything more important, because that truly is leadership. So that alone tells me I am in the right room, because leadership is what I would like to talk to you all about today. Because leadership is not a title. It's not a position. It's about putting others above self and humanity. I would like to, as Cassidy say, explore the thesis of my book, The Leadership We Need, a new mindset for a brighter future. And you do have a bookmark on your table if you're interested in more information with a QR code on it. And that thesis and that question is, what world becomes possible if leadership is rooted in humanity instead of dominance? So that is my thesis, and that is kind of the theme I want to stick with today. Currently, we have very much a tradition and a leadership culture, and it's been one since dawn of civilization for the last 10,000 years, which is rooted in dominance. It's dominance against dominance, aggression versus aggression. Tension rises, escalation, conflicts keeps popping up over and over again. How about if it would look something like this? We have dominance versus humanity, de-escalating tension, aggression throughout the world. It may seem risky at first that we would try something new, again, something that we actually never have had in our history of humanity. But if you think about the dominance versus dominance and aggression that we currently have and continuously seeing all over the world, this tension that has created had cost 150 to 231 million lives just within the last 100 years. So is this really risky to try to lower that tension and leading from a place of humanity instead? I think it's more risky to continue that dominance against dominance and aggression. And there are bigger threats on the horizon than even the wars and genocides that we've seen, and I'm going to get to that during this talk. But before we get into the questions and the research on my book that I wanted to share with you, I want to acknowledge this extremely diversified audience here today, because to me, this is humanity. We have people of all different religious beliefs, ideologies, political views. We have young, we have old, we have women, we have men. This is a fantastic audience, and this is exactly the humanity that I speak to, and how we need more of this. Because you are that diversity of thought that is so critical in leadership. So I want to start this talk on a very positive note, and then I want to get into a little bit of a negative, and then hopefully end on a positive note, and something that you can walk away with today. It's called the sandwich technique. I'm sure you're very familiar with that technique. I use it every day in my work. And to start on something positive, I want to start with what unites us, and I hope unites us. And of course, there's so many things we all share and have in common. But we can all say, I believe, that we live in interesting times. And I bet most of us would be very happy to live now and not even 100 years ago. It might seem frustrating, and sometimes it's even a little bit of a despair. But I do think if we stay true to feeling it's interesting, then we can also be curious and stay open to what we have in our hands and how we can change things, instead of disengaged in despair. So let's keep it interesting, because it truly is. Now, just think about how thankful we should be for the medical and the technological advancements we have had. I was unfortunately diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS, in the end of last year. And before 1993, there was nothing that the medical community could do about MS. Today, my doctor just told me this week, I have 20 treatment options for MS. Still not a cure, but just think how far we have gotten. Before the MS disease had been around, we know, at least for about 100 to 150 years, and there was really nothing they could do. And now they're even talking about having a cure within the next 10 to 15 years, and maybe with AI, that might even become sooner. So I'm hopeful it will happen in my lifetime. So let's get into the negative part of my talk, and that is that everyone who is guided by science, expertise provided by the experts, we know that we live in a polycrisis reality. This is well established by research from our great research institutions across the globe, everything from Oxford University to NASA to the Stockholm Resilience Project. Now, the polycrisis is defined by rampant climate change, unregulated AI, unregulated biotechnology, as well as escalating nuclear threats, and of course, we still have the ongoing conflicts of wars and genocides in the world. So the question isn't, are we in a polycrisis? The question is really, do we have the leadership and the capabilities to deal with it? Now, after all, everything rises and falls on the shoulders of leadership. And as a leadership consultant, that is what I'm focusing on. Now, if you listen to the experts in the field of existential threats, we know that they've given us 1 in 6 risk of not making it through the next 100 years. That's 17%. Even if the estimate would be half of that, let's say 8%, that is not acceptable. Would you get on an airplane with an 8% chance of crashing? I don't think so, but that's where we're at. So the stakes have never been higher than now, and we need a very different kind of leadership if we are to solve the challenges that we are faced with for a brighter future for all. Now, the good news is we're not victims of this trajectory, even though it might sometimes feel like we are. We are participants in this trajectory. Now, since dawn of civilization, let's say 10,000 years or so, leadership has been monopolized by men. And not just men, but a hyper-masculine type of male, an alpha male, if you will. And today, we still have 93% of businesses, Fortune 500 companies, led by men. 93% of all nations worldwide are led by men. And 100% of all world religions are led by men. Now the question is, how well has this monopoly worked for us? I think it's a fair question. Because after all, and I think we can all agree, monopolies are rarely a good thing. And that holds the same in leadership. So is this the best we can do? Is this humanity's greatest potential? Do we have the diversity of thought to stay clear of the clouds ahead? I would like to stop here and do a quick thought experiment, which of course includes every single one in this room. So if we pretended that every single one of you represented a country in the world, and you were the leaders of that country, how would our world look like? And let's say you've been that leader for 10,000 years. Would we have a public crisis today? I doubt it. And the reality is that this humanity that I see in front of me in this room exists in every single nation in the world. And this could lead us forward. And I know a lot of you are leaders. So leadership is just an abstract idea. There is actually absolutely no formal training in becoming a leader. None. No certification, no real classes, no books, nothing that's going to say you are now a leader. So every single one of us could technically become a leader. And in the end of my book, I actually do have a few exercises. I know most of you probably are leaders already in your domain, but for those of you that are looking to become leaders, and for the youngers, I think there could be some great of value to them to look into how would that look like for them. So leadership is really about mindsets, and is really about the mindset that you carry yourself, and also the mindset of leadership in your culture, and what kind of leaders we bring forward, what we're looking for and what we're valuing. So the question that is interesting to ask is, could we have gotten here with amazing medical and technological advancements that we have today, including just seeing Cassidy talking from Michigan and introducing me was amazing if you think about it. But could we have gotten here today without the suffering of all these people that I mentioned? and also of animals. Just think about industrial farm animals and how we currently still have terrible practices around capitalism and farm animals, and also the extreme attack and degradation to our environment. Could we have gotten here without all of that? Well, we will never know. But what I do think is very, very clear, I would say crystal clear today, is that that exact leadership does not sustain life. And we can no longer rely on that leadership going forward. Because we have actually never been led by humanity's greatest potential. It's been led by very narrow, short-term, self-centered leadership, mindset rooted in dominance over humanity. After all, the public crisis is man-made, not human-made, man-made. And I want to point that out. To make the situation worse, in time of crisis, we often look to alpha males, hyper-masculine, dominant males, men. As if they would protect us, like maybe they did back in the days, once upon a time, from the barbarians at the gate. And so the cycle continues, over and over and over again. Now, these leaders also thrive in a fragmented world. They need that tension. They need conflict. They need barbarians at the gate to stay in power. They would be obsolete if this world were a harmonious place led by humanity, compassion, caring, and love. So the leadership mindset that we have in the world today doesn't actually match the challenges we're faced with. And the gap between our power and our wisdom becomes greater every day, and the situation is frankly unsustainable. Now, we can talk about barbarians at the gate all day long, but the reality is that we have something much more threatening beneath it all. And that is that our entire human existence is at stake. That would take a leadership rooted in humanity to solve. Rachel Carson said it best. In nature, nothing exists alone. Now, under our monopolized, patriarchal leadership mindset, 74% of our biodiversity has been killed off since 1970. But we're thinking we're just going to continue business as usual, and magically, humanity will survive. We will not. So there I would like to stop and show a picture, which I think we already have preloaded here. Yay! So the survival of one depends on the survival of all. But it seems like the West have forgotten this simple truth. And this would be a good time to think about the indigenous population and how we truly need their wisdom more now than ever. They make up 5% of the human population, and they sit on 80% of what's left of our biodiversity. Now, in the West, we have leadership dominated by speed, dominance, and power, and competition. In the indigenous leadership, we have wisdom, we have community, all in service to life. I've happened to have the great opportunity to see that firsthand when I lived in Cameroon in Africa, in the Congo Basin rainforest, and I got to observe the indigenous population. And then at the time I just came from corporate America. And I'm also back there now being a leadership consultant. And I can tell you that it's humbling what you see there, humbling. The meetings are conducted by the chief, who always speaks last, where the community members have been heard and seen and valued. You contrast that with corporate America, where you have the leader of the team going first, speaking the loudest, and expecting everybody to agree. And often, everybody does agree. In the Good Old Boys Club, everybody's a yes-sayer, and on it goes. The indigenous leadership, they take time for such a simple decision as cutting down a tree. How is it going to impact the fauna, animals, insects, all of us? What about future generations? What about the shadow over this hut? Et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it takes time, but it's in service of life. In the West, in corporate America, we cut down entire forests with limited, if any, insight in how it's going to affect the long term, including even the long term of their own businesses and the survival of that business. Because they are all, after all, leading in short-term, quarterly earnings, GDP, and in short-term election cycles. They want to look good now, creating jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying leadership is easy, by the way. It's extremely hard, but that's where we're at. So the importance of short-term and long-term decision-making is crucial. So let's see here. I think I have another picture. Oh. So one of the many consequences in this type of leadership is, as I mentioned, the degradation to our environment and climate change, but it's more than that. Today, a baby born in the United States of America has up to 287 chemicals in their cord blood day one. That is not leadership success. It's the consequence of a very narrow, very short-term, and very profit-driven leadership mindset. And just maybe, the real measure of leadership is the world that our children inherit. So I believe that our children and grandchildren will ask us one day, what did you do to stop the madness? So let's make them proud. So how do we get there? Well, first of all, I hope that every single picture or every single babe on this picture is going to have a chance to become a leader. Not just a boy who is white. That would be a good first step. And maybe even the President of the United States of America. And that would be regardless of gender or the color of their skin. So we really need to think power, leadership, and our human potential. And first, I would say we have to address our unconscious and sometimes conscious bias in who we find qualified and capable to lead. And that is on us. It's truly on us. Barbarians at the Gate, that was a long time ago. And it's time that we evolve our leadership mindset. As I pointed out earlier, to actually match the challenges that we have. So what we want is not necessarily what we need. I would say that our monopolized, narrow mindset is holding back humanity in unimaginable ways. And everything that life depends on. Now, I am realistic. Our world might not ever be perfect. But I don't think it's naive to say that we could live in a world free of pollutants, free of wars and genocides, where 5 million children is not going to die this year alone because of starvation and preventable diseases, or another 7 million people are going to die from air pollution alone. That's not even including water and land pollution. It is, however, naive to think that we can get there with current leadership. That's naive to me. Now, Einstein said it best. You can't solve the problems with the same mindset that created them. So why are we? Now, in my book, I suggest a brand new leadership mindset for a brighter future. And to summarize this talk, I have 3 visuals for you, for those of you who are visual. And there's the first one. Again, we can blame leadership and bullies all day long, but in the end of the day, it's really up to us. It is on us. So the first thing that needs to happen is that we need to go from what we have in leadership to what we need in leadership. This is all very familiar, isn't it? Very comfortable. It's all we know. This, at first, might seem a little bit uncomfortable. But this is where we're going to find the diversity of thought needed. This is our greatest potential, our entire humanity represented. Now, this includes Global South. It would include the indigenous population that I spoke to, and other minorities. It would include people of color. It would include the entire LGBTQ community. And most importantly, it would include women. Women makes up half of humanity. Half of humanity has never been included in leadership and power positions around the world in the history of humanity. 10,000 years. Now, this is our best shot if we are to get this right. And it's more than just women. It's also the feminine leadership traits in all of us. It's ironic that our mindset has not evolved more. We're still growing and electing people that are taller than average, as if that would have something to do with leadership capabilities, but that's where we're at. I sometimes draw the parallel of how we're craving these type of leaders in a false sense of safety when we feel in fear. And we need that comfort. It's almost like we crave it like we crave comfort food in the form of sugar and fat. Once upon a time, we sure needed those calories because we never knew where our next meal was going to come from. And they're called comfort food. Just like we feel comfortable and confident in these leaders. Where once upon a time, yes, maybe we needed those tall, very masculine, masculine leaders when we did have barbarians at the gate. But today, ironically, is the sugar and fat that is not creating well-being or wellness. It even leads to early death. And I would say there is a parallel there. We can no longer afford to have these kind of leaders. It doesn't lead to our well-being, quite the opposite. And I would say it leading to our early death and even maybe our existence. So with that, I'd like to go to the second slide and see I'm doing on time. Good. Circles of connection. So here's what we have, and here's what we need. So currently we have this. At best, we have self, family, social groups, religions, and nations. This is what we defend. This feels comfortable and comforting, doesn't it? Now, this is where dominance is born. We stack each other. It says us versus them. my religion versus yours. I'm superior nations over these. And on it goes. And dominance is also competition. We compete with the rest of the world. And it's in competition that every war and genocide starts. What we need is this. We're all in this together. We're global citizens. This is humankind. We include all animals, insects, ecosystems, and past and future generations. This is how we avoid ecological collapse. Now, the world doesn't need more dominant leaders. The world needs more connected ones that sees the whole humanity. Last picture. This is what we have in our culture, and in particular in leadership. We overvalue the masculine, the courageous, the adventurous, the one who likes to explore, the tough, the dominant, the aggressive. That's what we have. This is what we need. This is peak performance. This is human potential. In an individual as well as in a culture, we will have a true balance between the masculine and the feminine. Because after all, these leaders cannot evolve and grow and become leaders in a culture that doesn't value them. So we need to think and maybe revalue what we value and incentivize and celebrate in our culture. And if we value competition and dominance, that is what we're going to get. And it's not necessarily what we need. So we need that balance between masculine and feminine. That is our greatest human potential. And it would look something like this, where we have courageous and courage, adventurous, and also have collaboration, compassion, caring, even love in our leadership. And that goes within us and in our culture. Now, I sometimes give the example of a girl is associated with pink, a boy is associated with blue. It's very innocent when they're babies. Now they grow older and a girl is dressing in blue. Oh, she's a tomboy, she's tough, she's courageous. A boy dressing in pink, girlish, soft, weak. It starts early, doesn't it? That is the culture that we have here today. Now, I grew up in Sweden, the female utopia of the world, if you watch the movie Barbie, that is. But it's pretty well known for being a very feminine nation and culture. And one day I would love to come back to tell you a little bit more about those culture differences and what type of leaders rise in different cultures. But that's for another time, since I have 5 more minutes. And we've come a long way since the day of the Vikings, by the way. But I wanted to stay true to my promise to end on a positive note. And that is, I truly believe that the best of humanity is yet to come. Because in the end of the day, we have everything we need within us and around us. So I want to end this talk where I started, and that is with a question of what world becomes possible if leadership is rooted in humanity instead of dominance? Thank you. So for that, I'm open for questions.
I agree with everything you said, but what you have introduced is a great idea. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That the world would be better if we went from In the a few hundred years ago, everybody said the world would be a lot better if we got rid of slavery. And it took a long time for that to happen. It isn't even complete. James Madison, in his secret notes on the Constitutional Convention, said we're not going to use the word slavery. We're going to use euphemisms. So in the future, when slavery is gone, nobody will know that it was written across the face of the great document. My question is, what kinds of organizations, to use the slavery example, there were anti-slavery societies that grew up around the world. What kinds of organized whatever are trying to make your wonderful vision come to fruition?
So I'm not quite sure I understand the question as far as how slavery ties into making the world a better place as of right now. But in organization, I speak to what I see, the difference in organizations, and maybe this is more so in cultures, is that, for example, if you look at more of the feminine culture like Sweden, we do know there are three things that holds very true. The first thing is that we do not have hierarchies, and we do not have hierarchies on the organizational chart. We have a very flat organizational chart, and we still get the job done. So, and we do have incremental growth. We have extremely high well-being. We are ranked on social progress indexes, wellness and happiness indexes, as well as having a good economy. So there is a win-win-win equation to possibly look into. And obviously, I can't speak to the slavery. I know we don't have slavery in Sweden at this time, but things are working very well. And back in the Viking days, that was obviously a different story.
Thank you for your talk. When I think about how we, as many Americans, feel hopeless by the incredible crushing power of corporate America and our government and so on, when I think about Minnesota as an example of where people, when faced with absolutely horrendous conditions being foisted upon them by our government, that's when they stood up as communities, right? And there was, I think, an effective response. You know, ICE did pull out of Minnesota. Can you make a comment about where the power of local resistance plays a role in overturning some of this leadership syndrome that you described so well in your talk?
These are some big questions here. I love it. I mean, it all starts with community, doesn't it? I mean, actually, I take that back. It starts with the inner balance between the masculine and feminine within you to find that power. And then it starts, and then from there it goes into the community of valuing the masculine and the feminine. So if you have a society and a community that has that balance, it's kind of a baseline for well-being, if you will. And I doubt that even that dominance that we're seeing coming into those neighborhoods would even think of coming in there, or at least it would not be rooted, because we have the antidote, right? That's all I can say based on my experience and my research in the book. I hope that helps. But the key there is to have that well-being and the balance in those communities.
Thank you for speaking to our club today. And I wanted to ask you, how do you see us moving from where we are now to where you think we should be? Is it a matter of changing our organizations, our institutions, or does humanity need to change?
I think humanity has always been a very good humanity. I really believe in the best in all of us. It starts with a mindset. It really does. We know that behaviors, actually how we think, comes from our mindset, and that mindset creates thinking, emotions, and then behaviors. So if we are to see different behaviors, we need to start with changing our mindset. And that's why those three visuals in the end was kind of trying to kind of provoke a little bit of that mindset shift that I would like to see in the United States of America and many other countries in the world as well, as we're moving back to more masculine cultures, not just here, but 11 countries in Europe as well, by the way. And so I think the key there to move forward is to find the balance within us as an individual, doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, and also start looking to that balance in the community and the society that you live in, where these kind of dominance will never rise to the top because that dominance would not be valued, neither incentivized or celebrated.
We have time for one more question, if there is one. Okay, I'm going to go to Darla. Thank you.
Maria, it is our tradition at Boulder Rotary that we get the last word. I have been given the honor to respond to your presentation, and as luck would have it, I was the first person to greet you when you came in today. First, as you graciously pointed out, this is a room filled with seasoned leaders. And I am sure most everyone in this room has received leadership advice that served us well. Your remarks today affirmed our commitment as Rotarians to humanitarian leadership. Thank you. In appreciation for you joining and sharing your leadership expertise with us today, Boulder Rotary will donate 100 doses of polio vaccine to Rotary International's campaign to eradicate polio in the world. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thanks for all that you do. You are truly leaders, every single one of you. Thank you.